I want to start by giving a little backstory to this whole ordeal. I don't want to put my name out there, so I'll just say my name is Adam. I moved out of my parents' house almost 5 months ago when I found a posting for a job that included a live-in apartment above it. I won't go into too much detail about my life before that, but I was eager to leave my situation behind and have a life of my own free from it, so I jumped on the opportunity. I called the phone number provided and talked to a kind, older-sounding woman who took down my name and answered a few of my questions. At first, I was skeptic and expressed as such, understandable given how well-paying it was and all that came with accepting the job. She assured me it was a real offer and that the reason for that was because they were struggling to find anyone that would stay at the job for more than a few weeks. Obviously, this was a red flag, and I even tried to press for more information, but she was reluctant to tell me more. Most people would have left then and there, and rightfully so, but like I said, I was in a bad situation and needed out, so desperation won over logic and reason. The job was to take care of a store in a small town some miles over from where I grew up. I would be in charge of the whole store, all besides ordering stock. The woman said they order stock periodically on their end, so I would just have to worry about unloading and shelving things. I didn't have a car, so I had to ask a local friend to drive me over. I explained to them the whole thing, and obviously, they didn't think it was a good idea, but they also understood what position I was in, so they quickly let it be. Part of me wishes they hadn't, but hindsight is 20/20, so they say. When we rolled into the sleepy town of Pinewood, named very originally after the fact it was, in fact, in the middle of a pine-forested area, I already felt the sense of offness. Now, you hear stories about this all the time. People driving through creepy old towns where the residents just stare at you as you pass by, but that was what this town was like. Both me and my friend were extremely creeped out by this. He even asked me multiple times if I was absolutely sure about this. But honestly, between living in some creep town and going back to my parents, I would have roomed with a serial killer if I had to. We got to the store, which was situated at the far end of the main street running through the town. The general store, looking somewhat run down in that typical old town sort of way, where it almost had a charm to it. I will admit the charm did kind of pull me in a bit, and I figured maybe the townsfolk just didn't get a lot of people running through, let alone moving in, or maybe I was just trying to convince myself this was normal. The old lady I talked to over the phone met me at the door, where the other town folks had just stared. She seemed in high spirits and honestly just a sweet old lady, maybe in her 70s. Keeping the theme of anonymity for the rest of the retelling of events, I'll be calling her Miss Sylvie, or just Sylvie. Sylvie greeted me with such warmth and politeness that I honestly forgot about all the odd goings-on that led to this point. This was the conversation to the best I could remember. "You must be Adam. Such a handsome young man. Thank you so much for taking over the store. The old place is a staple in this town, and I'm just too old to keep it running, you see?" "Not a problem at all, miss. Really, I should be thanking you. I mean, you're giving me a home and a paying job at that. Really, thank you so much." "Oh, hush, think nothing of it." Exchanging a few more pleasantries, she took my hand into both of hers in a handshake. I remember her hands were cold. Not like corpse cold, but still colder than I felt was natural, given that it was the end of spring rolling into summer. I didn't pay it much attention as my friend took my 2 suitcases from the car. "Is that all your belongings, dear?" Sylvie asked, pointing a wrinkled finger at what housed all I had to call my own. "Yeah, not much, but it's enough." Mostly it was clothes, a laptop I had been given by the friend that was driving me after he got a new one, and a few other odds and ends. Sylvie nodded, maintaining that warm and welcoming smile she had on the whole time. "If you find you're in need of any clothes, Mr. Corrigan owns the tailor shop down the way. You can take anything we sell here if you have need of it. Of course, it will be taken out of your pay, with a discount." I nodded, following her hand motioning to the direction down the street. The street looked deserted, as if it had long been since abandoned and left to rot with not a soul in sight. Sensing what I was thinking, not that I was doing much to hide it in my face, Sylvie continued. "Most of this here town is old folks like myself. It's a quiet place, not much life in the late afternoon and evenings. There are a few younger couples, older than yourself, but they grow accustomed to the quiet times we tend to adhere to. That being said, we do ask that you keep sound to a minimum in the later hours. Us old folks need our beauty sleep, you know?" At that, She let out a laugh, the kind that you hear any old lady at a retirement home make. Honestly, she had a charm to her. The way she talked gave an air of maternity, a sense of genuine care for whoever she spoke to or of. Now then, if you follow me, dear, I'll show you to your apartment. It isn't much, but it should do well for someone living by themselves. By myself. It was at that moment that the sheer thought really dawned on me. I suppose to most people this would be a rather chilling thought, loneliness, but I found comfort in it. My parents were never a comfort to me, and I would spend most of my time alone anyhow. I grew accustomed to it, welcomed by it, my safe space. Sylvie led me through the store. It was rather small, but that was to be expected, I suppose. In a way, it was cute. A small general store for a small town. A few aisles with stock shelves, some fridges in back for meats and frozen goods, and a few more, well, general items. In the back is where I would be most of the time. A cashier's counter, a shelf behind stocked with cigarettes, and a mirror to see at some parts of the store. The place didn't have any sort of surveillance, which I guess was on point for a store that old and in a sleepy town. I suppose crime wasn't too common anyhow. Next to the cashier's counter was the door to the storage room, with a freezer along the back wall, and the rest just shelves. Through there was the door to the stairs leading up to my apartment, and a door leading outside to the back where the garbage was. Going up the stairs as my friend helped carry my bags, I reached the top, a long hallway greeting me, the lights a dim yellow with that all too familiar fluorescent buzzing. My door was the first, and then after was the one other door at the end. I looked at it somewhat puzzled, figuring it must be some apartment next door, though, unlike mine, there was no peephole, and there seemed to be quite a few locks on it. It was hard to see from the angle I was standing, but it was strange for sure. Unlocking the door and letting me in, I got my first view of the place. It certainly didn't feel small to me, but then again, a cardboard box would have likely been a welcoming home to me at that point. But the place was more than I could ever ask for. A small living room right at the door, no TV, but that was fine, a dining room on the other end, which sat across from a rather large kitchen. The whole place was outdated with walls covered in wallpaper, that vintage yellow in the kitchen, the couch in the living room spotted with flowers. Some would call it tacky, but again, I found a charm in it. It felt like the kind of place someone could call home. She pointed down a short hall, guiding me to where the bedroom and bathroom were. The bedroom had a bed and a mattress, which looked somewhat worn but usable, which she apologized for, but I told her it was more than fine. A decently large closet, and a desk at the far end. Across from the bedroom was the bathroom, complete with a shower, a bath, a toilet which faced the sink and a mirror. And yes, that did mean I had to stare at myself when I was using it. And yes, I hated it. I put my bags down as we walked to the front door, waving my friend off since he had to make the drive back, leaving me behind to talk some more with Sylvie. She put her kettle of water on the stove, and we sat at the dining table. I know this isn't the sort of place you young folk would call fancy, but I hope it's well enough for you. It's more than I could ask for, really. Thank you so much. She smiled warmly at me. If you don't mind my asking, dear, what led you to take the job? It's quite rare for us to get such young folk through this town, even more rare for them to stay. I thought about it a bit, deciding how to answer. Well, ma'am. Oh, dear, you can just call me Sylvie. You can call me ma'am when I'm so old I can't even walk anymore. She let out a laugh. Her cheery demeanor put me more at ease. I mulled around in my head how to answer. I didn't want to spill my sob story to her, so I answered quite simply. Well, Sylvie, I just wanted a new start, away from things. She looked at me for a moment, perhaps deciding if she wanted to press me more for details or not. Ultimately, she decided not to, accepting my answer and perhaps recognizing that I didn't want to talk about it anymore. After a moment, I responded with my own question. How come you're looking for someone to run the store? Even giving them, well, me, the apartment space and all. I guess it just seems too good to be true. I stammered for a moment, making sure she wasn't offended, which, of course, I'm more than grateful for the fact that it's not. She chuckled warmly at my verbal stumble, then nodded. Well, she began, I did run this store some time ago. I ran it with my late husband, you see, and it had become something of a staple for the locals. When my son had gotten old enough to take over, he promised to do so to let me retire, and I moved to the house down the way. She paused for a moment, as if to decide how much of the following to include. He had run the store for perhaps a few months before he started to seem tense. I had assumed that running the store had become to cause a lot of stress for him, and he told me he wanted to leave the town. He never told me why exactly. She seemed to grow sad at that last part. I sensed that there was more to that, but I didn't want to pry, seeing as how she had given me the same courtesy. Anywho, after he left, I had considered taking over the store again, but I felt I was perhaps a bit too old by then. There was no one in the town that could take over, so I took to putting out a post for the job. I've had a few people take it since then, though they usually don't stay for more than a few years. I found that last part somewhat concerning. This seemed like the perfect job, the perfect situation to be handed. Was there any reason for that? She hummed to herself, contemplating her answer. They all seemed to be rather stressed by running the store, lacking energy. They had all been young like you, so I just assumed it was fatigue from the responsibility, which I understand. She nodded at that last part, seemingly to herself. I felt like she was certainly hiding more details from me, but I was in no position to pry further. I needed this as much as she seemed to, so I didn't want to blow it by asking too much. We spent some time after talking about what I would have to do around the store, the going on of the town, and some detail of the town's inhabitants. She had poured us both some tea, which we had long since finished by the time the sun had started to set over the horizon. She excused herself, saying that it was getting late, to which I said I understood as I saw her to the door. She thanked me again as she left. For the first month of my living here, things were calm, refreshingly so. I would wake up at around 6, eat, shower, then open the store at 7. I had set up my laptop at the cashier's desk, as Sylvie told me that I was free to do whatever I wanted during the slow hours, as long as the store was stocked and clean. It was quiet more often than not, with the occasional customer coming in. Despite my initial impressions of the townfolk, they were all rather nice, respectful, and eccentric, and I had grown to know them all rather well. There was Mr. Corrigan, the tailor, a well-dressed man with a British accent who loved to talk about stories from his past, most of which I assumed to be made up. If he were to be believed, he was a well-known exotic hunter, soldier, spy, scientist, relative to the Duke of Wales, and quite the ladies' man. There was Miss Morgan, who was an elderly, dark-skinned lady who carried herself with etiquette and poise, dressed like a woman straight out of the Victorian era, though she always seemed rather kind, if a bit pretentious. There was Mr. and Mrs. Layden, the local doctor and vet respectively, who were the youngest among the residents at around late 30s to early 40s, as well as their son and daughter who were only a bit younger than myself. There were more, but by now I believe I've painted a good enough picture. This town was close-knit, quiet, peaceful, and charming. And that is where the normal ends, and the concerning begins. Starting with the feeling. Sometime around my second month here, I began to get this feeling of being watched. At first, it was just a small feeling, like when you're walking down a busy road and you look over your shoulder every now and again. I had always been a bit anxious, so it was easily dismissed. As time passed, however, that feeling only grew, and it always felt worst when I was in the hall outside my apartment. This feeling as though something was staring right at me, boring holes right into the back of my neck. To give a description of how bad the feeling got, it was as like the feeling you get walking down a dark alley at night with not a single person around, constantly checking the signs of life to which you never spot. By then, I had assumed perhaps my anxiety disorder had simply gotten worse, and made a mental note to check in with Mr. Layden when I could. It was only a feeling, you see, and those are easy to dismiss, especially if it's just a feeling. One night, I awoke from a deep sleep, startled and alert. The darkness of my room felt suffocating, and although I was in my own bed under my warm blanket, I had this sudden and explosive feeling that something was there. I figured I had just had a nightmare, but I scanned the room anyway. There was nothing. Nothing at all, and I felt silly for even considering the notion. Tap, tap, tap. My blood froze as I heard tapping. Initially, I assumed it was at the window on the far end of the room, perhaps a branch outside, but there was no tree there close enough for that. Maybe someone was at my front door. At this hour, though, not likely. The silence was deafening, but long enough to where I had started to feel maybe I just imagined it. Tap, tap, tap. I felt bile rise up in the back of my throat, and every hair on my body stand in alert. I most certainly did not imagine it. That was real. Rationality kicked in, and I continued to reason with myself what it could be. Maybe there was a rodent in the walls or attic, though I had not seen any mouse or rat droppings, but that doesn't mean there can't be. Tap, tap, tap. My eyes moved to the door of my bedroom. I lived alone, but I still kept my bedroom door closed. I'm not sure if that's weird, but having grown up with no privacy nor security, closing the door made me feel safe and comfortable. Tap, tap, tap. What the fuck? It was on the door. The tapping was on the fucking door. Not the bottom of the door where I could still reason it to be a rodent. The upper middle of the fucking door. Someone or something was behind that door, tapping on it in intervals of 3. Tap, tap, tap. There were 3 taps, then a pause for a few moments, long enough for my ears to start to hone in on any other possible noise. Then tapping again. I felt sick, horrified. What do you even do in a situation like this? Whatever or whoever it was inside my house, tapping on my door for whatever reason. A normal burglar would not be tapping on someone's closed bedroom door, and sure as shit, not over and over. Tap, tap, tap. A psycho killer? Out this far off the beaten path? I've heard of weirder shit than that. I remember one time hearing about a killer that would tap on people's windows at night to lure them over in confusion. Could this be something similar? Was I about to get killed if I opened the door? But that guy did it so he could get in, and this person was already in the damn apartment, so why not just kill me? Tap, tap, tap. I racked my brain for anything in my room I could use to defend myself. I didn't have a bat or anything, nor was I a gun owner, though I'd certainly be reconsidering that after this night. And I didn't think a plastic hanger was going to be much good. Then I remembered I had a box cutter sitting on my nightstand. I had left it in my pants after closing up shop, normally leaving it in the storage room for when I had to open more boxes, and only noticed before hopping into bed. I left it there so I would remember to take it in the morning, and I was happy as hell to have been so forgetful for once. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly reached to it, gripping it tight as I extended the blade and slowly rose from my bed. The floor was carpeted, which helped muffle my steps as I slowly creeped to the door. My plan was to put my ear to it, assess what was going on the other side, which seemed stupid in hindsight, but thinking is hard when you're in fight or flight situation. As I got to the door, I was overcome with a new sense that caused me to stop instantly. Tap, tap, tap. When I was a kid, a raccoon had gotten into our wall somehow and, unable to escape, died. After some time, it began to rot, causing a stench so foul that my deadbeat dad was forced to actually do something about it. The smell of death is something you don't forget. The stench of rot and decay. The stench that was emanating from behind my door. Tap, tap, tap. I held back the urge to gag for fear of making any sound. I somehow didn't smell it when I was in bed, or even when I was tiptoeing over to the door. I only smelled it when I was maybe a foot from it. I swallowed hard, put a hand over my nose, and leaned into that final step, putting ear to door. There was no sound, no breathing, not even that absence of sound you get when something is blocking the airflow. It was literally nothing at all. I was sent flying backwards as a sudden flurry of slamming assaulted my ear, the door flexing with each hit, threatening to be torn from its very hinges, broken down entirely. I scurried back, retreating under my desk at the opposite side from the door, hiding like a scared child and clutching my little blade for dear life. The banging continued for what felt like an eternity before I finally cried out, "Please, go away!" Then it just stopped. I stayed curled up under my desk, waiting for it to start again, but it didn't. There was no tapping, no banging, nothing at all. And I was left there, too scared to leave what had become my safe haven, eventually passing out from exhaustion. I awoke maybe 3 or 4 hours later, the sun having only just creeped over the horizon and casting light into my room. Perhaps I could have cast this off as a nightmare, if not for the fact I woke up still under my desk, the box cutter still in hand. As the memories came to me in a sleepy haze, I became instantly alert, staring at the door. It looked just as it had the day before, though I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting as I slowly rose to my feet. The smell was gone as I approached, knife held out and ready, just in case, as I slowly turned the knob and pushed the door open. I suppose it isn't too shocking that there was nothing there, but what was stranger than that was the fact that nothing was disturbed. Nothing had been taken, nothing had been knocked over, or even had any signs of being touched at all. I walked through the whole place, checking every corner more than once, but there was nothing. It wasn't until I had started to walk back to my bedroom, thinking maybe I had hallucinated or had some sort of episode, that my attention was drawn to the floor. The carpet had been on the floor through most of the house, save for the bedroom and the kitchen, and in my search for the would-be perp, there was no muddy footprint or anything. On the carpet, just at the door, however, was 2 footprint-shaped wet spots, having nearly dissipated and only barely noticeable. The days that followed were calm again, but the calm didn't last for long. If it had only happened once, I doubt I would be putting this here. There was calm for 5 or 6 days, the feeling of being watched leaving then coming back, and then the tapping at night. There was no reach pattern, though. Sometimes there were 3 days between the knocking, sometimes there was up to 9. But as sure as the wind blows, the tapping would come again. It's been months of this now. Sleep has grown harder. When it shows up now, it's more aggressive, knocking harder each time it shows. I know I should call Sylvie, but I've been too scared to hear what she would have to say about this, either thinking I was crazy and asking me to leave, or the truth she might have that I didn't know if I wanted to hear. It's going to show up again tonight. I know it will. I don't know how I know, but I do. I'm scared. I'm horrified. Please, for the love of God, someone tell me what to do. Help.